Cressida Cowper has been one of the most entertaining villains I've seen in a while. For a long time, I've always known about Cressida's story and her arc within the books, and I know that she's been a notorious bully to Penelope and also to the rest of the Bridgerton family. And like the rest of us, I was equally as surprised when Eloise decided to befriend her, but I was also pleasantly surprised as to how the two of them sort of meshed well together and brought out characteristics in each other that we needed to see and needed to be addressed. I was very curious to how they were going to take the Cressida and Penelope and Eloise arc, and I was a little bit worried that they were going to try and give her this ultimate redemption arc instead of making her the villain that she actually is, like her book counterpart. But season 3 has surprised me, and may I say, Cressida is the perfect storm for season 3. I said it in my previous video that something was clearly lacking from part 1 of season 3, and that was the lack of pure drama, and Cressida was the perfect answer. But first, if you don't know who I am, hi, my name is Deborah, student, singer, songwriter, and everything else in between. Welcome back to my channel. Let's get into it. So let's start with the slow descent of Cressida into villainhood. I do like the fact that the show gives Cressida more of a motive to become a villain, because book-wise, her motives are sort of very vague. And also in the book, she was supposed to be married and have financial losses, and therefore needing the money, she blackmails Penelope. But this time round, it also gives us more of a personal and messier motive, which I really love. At the same time, the show was able to give us a motive that we can also sympathize with, and we can also despise her at the same time, which is not an easy task. I love how they showed her quick descent from Eloise and her friendship, and Eloise being really involved with herself and her own family and putting Penelope and everybody first on top of their friendship, and how quickly she realized that even Eloise wasn't listening to her. And the fact is, in this situation, that Eloise could only do so much and would probably, like the rest of the Ton, cover their social standing before helping anybody else. Or at least I thought that tidbit was very tastefully done, and with each episode she was just digging a bigger and bigger hole for herself. I love the fact that she also has her own insecurities, how she isn't seen by others as clever, and that is a recurring theme that people mention about her. Personally, for me, I always thought that she was clever in the sense of that she was sly and she was probably a quick thinker, but I guess to the rest of the Ton, their definition of clever is someone who has good quips and with a better reputation than Cressida. I thought they would perhaps call her out on her inability to look past herself or all the cruelties that she's performed towards other people in the earlier seasons, and that's also why there's a possibility that she was not married or was not necessarily favored by any suitor, is because she was notoriously a big backstabber and didn't really get along with all the other ladies besides the ladies that she had in her own circles. But nevertheless, this is what we were given, and I'm not complaining. I did think that the show portrayed her perfect slow descent back into villainhood, and it didn't feel unnatural or abrupt with her character. It just felt as if she was going back to the person that we always knew that she was. And like I said previously in my other video, Penelope has a sort of pseudo Cinderella arc, and naturally in these kinds of stories there needs to be a villain to make the story complete, which is why it worked so well this time around. But I do love the fact that the show understands the nuances of being a woman in society and the notorious villainhood that a lot of women get from making certain choices. Especially in the scene between Colin and Cressida, where Colin thinks that he can just speak some reason into her or some sense into her, and he speaks from such a privileged point of view and not being fully aware of how hard it is as a woman in this society, and also the fact that he has a family that really supports him, which is also a common theme within the Bridgertons, how they really take for granted the fact that their family and having familial support and having such a social standing is a huge privilege. A lot of people, whether in this show or real life, do not have that kind of familial support, and I love how she told him to his face straight. Now, Cressida was considerably horrible to Penelope all of her life, so she still remains an antagonist, but you also feel so much sympathy for her. I do think this sort of antagonistic arc also gives voices to a lot of women within this time who made dubious decisions that we as a modern people wouldn't agree with today. She made these decisions to be able to survive. There was no way she could attain money within a short amount of time. She did not want to be married to someone who was literally 3 times her age, who wanted to make her life miserable. She would probably have to face a Lady Danbury situation, which I remember watching that from Queen Charlotte and I was mentally scarred. I personally, if I was in her situation, would have considered a slow poison such as arson, although I don't know if that really existed at that time just yet. Either way, a slow poison would have done for me. But Like I said, women in this time didn't really have that many options, and so them making dubious decisions such as blackmail or fighting other women for positions, while in a modern view feels so anti-feminist, back then it was a state of survival, and I do not blame them. It was until when we got to the blackmail where I was like, girl. But at the same time, I also still understood. I would have taken the money and ran. And even though I knew that subplot was coming because I read the books, I was so surprised at how scandalous and messy and well done it was within the show. And it was the perfect storm for this story. Another random detail I wanted to point out is that with each worst decision, her outfit changes alongside her decisions that she makes. So for example, one thing I found really interesting is that when she finally claimed to be Lady Whistledown and she attended the Mondrian ball, I noticed that she wore red. Now, a lot of the times in Bridgerton, there are very, very few times that ladies in this society actually wear red. I think red still at this time had a very negative connotation or a scandalous connotation. I'm not necessarily sure, and please, anyone who's a costume expert or a history expert, correct me on this, but I do think that the red that she donned was very, very bold, and we haven't seen any of the other ladies wear red besides Lady Danbury and Kate as a married woman, and even then her red was a muted sort of red. But that was just a random tidbit. And another opinion I have is that if it wasn't for Cressida being Lady Whistledown or trying to impersonate Lady Whistledown and having to deal with the first few blows, I don't think it would have been as smooth for Penelope to confess that she was Lady Whistledown as it went throughout in the show. See, we've seen the consequences of what it feels like to be on the queen's bad side and be expelled from her court, especially if she finds you as her rival or not good enough. So as a result, I actually do think it's a good thing that Cressida confessed or gave a fake confession as Lady Whistledown, because not only did it force Penelope to recognize that her paper is power, her paper is her legacy, but it also took a lot of the initial blows that would have hit Penelope at the beginning. In fact, I do think that people, when they found out that Penelope was Lady Whistledown, would have had a little bit more respect for her than for Cressida, because it just went so badly that people would have preferred an alternative, and a respectable alternative nonetheless. Not to mention, Cressida's own column was completely full of lies and was so dubious and so scandalous that I think people would have actually preferred the real information that Lady Whistledown has been providing them all of this time. And I do think that Cressida making this fake confession worked definitely in Penelope's favor. Now, naturally, this is the Ton and they will never truly forget, and she'll still be facing some repercussions from society, but I do think that Cressida definitely took the fall, and that really worked in Penelope's favor. Finally, I do think that Cressida's messiness and her arc was the sort of perfect glue to sort of bring everyone together, because previously, like we were saying, there are so many subplots in the first half of the season that it felt that they really had nothing to do with one another and were taking time away from Pollen. But it wasn't until Cressida's messiness that forced everybody to sort of be entangled with one another, and it wasn't until this arc did we really finally get the sort of united front of people trying to stick up for Penelope and also protect Penelope alongside with the Bridgerton family. And if we look at in previous seasons, there's always some extra drama that is added. I mean, in season 2, I remember Kate falling off her horse and injuring her head, and it finally took her injury before Anthony and her can kind of get together, even after all the messiness with Edwina. And I really feel like this is that sort of catalyst, but with even better and higher stake, and also sort of solidified her and Eloise's friendship, and also solidified her finally being a Bridgerton and being in the Bridgerton family, which is something that she has wanted for so long. Not to mention, this situation changed the whole entire Featherington household. This was absolutely messy and truly entertaining in a good way. And I'm really, really happy with season 3. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. Please let me know if you liked this video or how you guys are feeling down in the comments below. I will see you guys in my next video. Okay, bye.
Oh my.